Hello, my friends. Sorry about that. I was desperately trying to find out if I'm actually live or where I'm supposed to be live. So, hi, I'm here. Um, so, if you're like me, you are sick and tired of being tired because, yeah, who isn't with RA? And in fact, 79% of us have fatigue associated with RA. And chances are, if you ask people who live with rheumatoid arthritis, if what they think is worse, the pain or the fatigue, chances are very good that they say the fatigue. When even when we're in remission, we may have fatigue, and it can range from mild to debilitating. So, what is fatigue? Um, what can we do about it? How do we make it a priority in our treatment? And how do we cope? I have ideas and I'm going to share them with you. And here's hoping that the cat actually behaves because, um, who knows? I had the choice to put her in another room and said, no, she's sleeping, it'll be fine. And the moment I start talking, she gets up. So it's the surprise element of this life. So, did you know that people with RA may have more severe physical fatigue than people who have cancer? Yeah, it's true. These findings are from a German study that compared different aspects of fatigue, physical fatigue, emotional fatigue, etc. And between two groups, one with RA, one with cancer. And before we discuss anything further, let me be super specific here. There is no competition here. There's no compare. Like, it's your experience is valid in the context of your life. How a particular condition affects you, it doesn't matter about the studies, right? But I think one of the things that differ between cancer and RA is that when you have cancer, and that's a shitty disease. Can I say shitty? Crappy disease. Collection of diseases, of illnesses, but you are generally allowed space to deal, to go away and make treatment your full-time job. When you have RA, you're expected to just get on with it. And I think it comes down to some sort of lack of understanding of, for instance, what fatigue is, what RA is, but that's not exactly. That's for another day. Today, we're just going to talk about the fatigue. I will say that study felt validating because it's like, oh, somebody recognized that my fatigue is debilitating. This is really good. It just felt like I feel seen. But there's no treatment for the fatigue. A doctor, like your rheumatologist, will treat your RA inflammation and hope that the fatigue also reduces. And it often does if you're treated and go into remission or low disease activity, which may also be a treatment goal. Chances are your fatigue will be reduced, but chances are also pretty good that some element of it will remain. And it can make it really hard to soldier on as expected. So, what are some of the reasons other than RA that you think you have fatigue? Do you have other conditions? Are you super busy? Anything like that, let me know in the comments. And I'd love to also, in general, share your stories or your questions in the comments, and I'll get to them in a little bit. And so I got completely thrown by the cat moving around. This is why I don't do lives. Like the pre-recorded, it has some elements of predictability. On the other hand, I really kind of love I never know what might happen, right? So yeah, share your story and your questions in the comments. This is always more fun when it's a two-way conversation. So, why are we so tired? Let's talk about that. There's a lot of reasons, really. There's RA inflammation to start with. As you know, probably, RA doesn't just affect your joints, it's systemic, it affects your whole body. And that means that, you're not just have RA pain, you also have things like fatigue. And there's a theory that the fatigue is actually what's called sickness behavior. And you probably know that when animals are sick, they basically go hide under some shrubbery or in a cave and lie down until they feel better. People aren't allowed that, but the idea is that sickness behavior is the same thing with the inflammation in your body. Under normal circumstances, that's an indication that you're fighting a virus, you're fighting a bacteria, the inflammation is part of what fights back for your body. And when you have an autoimmune disease like RA, and again, we're going to get back to the basics. Your immune system gets confused and attacks your tissues rather than reserve its attacks for foreign bodies, bacteria, etc. But, and like we see that with people when they're sick, if you have the flu, or COVID, or a cold, or any kind of other infection, you don't feel good. You feel really tired. You have low energy. And all of this, and that basically means that the inflammation is fighting back. However, when that inflammation is chronic, as in RA, that means that you feel like that all the time, and yet the expectation is that you go about your life. Anyway, there's also some studies that show that tumor necrosis factor, it's a type of cytokine, pro-inflammatory cytokine, which is a small protein that triggers inflammation. It's involved in that response to fight things. It is believed they are at least part of the cause of RA fatigue, and that's supported by research that experimented with blocking the TNF, tumor necrosis factor, and it resulted in a reduction of fatigue. It's the basis for instance, one class of biologics known as TNF blockers. And yes, like I said, when you're in remission or your inflammation is suppressed to low disease activity, your fatigue may improve. And that was my experience, like back in 2005 when I first started biologics. Having a medication that works and then that feeling of gradually waking up again is just phenomenal. Like my brain worked for the first time in years. It was amazing. But even in remission, it is fairly normal to experience fatigue. And as Pamela says out in the comments, which I will share, says, I'm in remission and yet have lots of fatigue. And I know what you mean. But why is that? And it's not quite known yet, but there is some interesting research out there that's starting to look at it. And you can read more about that in my post that accompanies this live on my website, and that will be below in somewhere. Below, above, I don't know. We'll find it. So you can also go to theseatedview.com and you can find it right in on the front page. But for instance, some of the factors include comorbidities, which I talked about last week in a video. Let me know if you saw it. And things like fibromyalgia, maybe you have chronic pain from RA damage, maybe you have depression. These and many other conditions can bring in deep fatigue, so that may be part of the reason. And really, then we get to your life. Your life can make you tired. And we're all really busy. Like we've come to a point where in our culture where it is valued to be intensely busy. And if you look at your healthy and able-bodied peers, you will see tired people, very tired people. Everybody is burning their candle, both ends plus the middle. Um, and and it just sometimes feel like everybody's driving themselves into the ground. And you do that with a chronic illness and like basically full-time job that comes along with managing that. You're going to be even more tired. It's a surprise we're still standing, quite frankly. So now we come to, let's talk to your doctor about this. Is managing fatigue part of your conversations with your doctors? Has your doctor ever brought it up? Is it covered at all? Is it one of those things? It's like, well, we'll treat you, you'll feel better. Let me know. So let's talk about talking to your doctor. So I read a lot of studies for this post and the video, and you can see all the sources in my blog post on theseatedview.com if you want to kind of dive into the nitty gritty of it. But what they seem to agree on is that fatigue increases what they call the burden of disease, and that is how much RA affects your life. And most emphasize the importance of assessing for fatigue in a clinical setting. Like when you go to your doctor, they should assess how tired you are. And it should be part of that whole, we'll take a look at your joints, we'll do your blood test, and then talk about fatigue. And it should be included as a target for treatment. So your doctor is your partner in getting you back to a better life. And it's important that they know how fatigue affects you. And to be honest, your satisfaction with that relationship, with your treatment, depends a lot on whether you feel that your doctor listens and your doctor understands you. And if you're still working on creating that relationship of trust and open communication, one of the things I would recommend is the Talk Over RA discussion guide, which is also linked. And if it isn't, I will link it immediately following this live. And it's a great tool to make it happen. And it's something I talk about every year in the fall when I do talk over RA in this event. And to be honest, I'm not just saying that because I'm part of the event. It's a great event. I wouldn't be part of it if I didn't believe in what it stands for. But this particular discussion guide, I actually really use myself for the rest of the year. It's a really great way to get clarity on your symptoms and your goals and how your symptoms interfere with your goal. And then I'll just see if I can show it in the stream. Okay, so let's see if I can increase that. Let's see if that worked. That work? No, it didn't. So this is basically the Talk Over a discussion guide, or the top half of it anyway. And it starts with saying things like, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish in the coming weeks and months? And there goes the cat. It talks about documenting your symptoms. How are you currently feeling? What are your questions? And where do you want to go to, right? So I really enjoy this because it just really helps articulate how I'm feeling. And what I do is I print out 2 copies and give one to my doctor. And like after the initial hi, how are you? Let me feel your hands. But I'll give one to my doctor. I keep one, and then we talk. Let me just get that out. Okay. So I recommend that you download it, take a look, and see if this is something that might work for you. And like for me, the fatigue, it comes and goes, just like RA symptoms. The last year has been really hard. The fatigue was intense. My brain fog was intense. It was all like I was still in remission, but it was still very much there. Excuse my apartment. And can I unmute my mic for a moment? Okay, he didn't hear me. My partner is here, so I was hoping he could open the door for the cat, but never mind, we almost done. I hit rock bottom. I really did. And it's one of the reasons I've been very on and off, mostly off social media for a long time, because that was nothing. Um, excuse me, this is not ideal, but I'll be back. Yes, Pepper. Come on, come on. Beep, 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 beep. Jesus. Excuse the grunting. Try to open a door handle with your foot. But she's out. So that's the thing. Um, yeah, back to me, rock bottom, all the things. Uh, and it was, I talked to my doctors about it. We did all the things. We checked whether my meds were working. So we did blood tests. We checked whether how my vitamin D and B12 levels and my iron and all of this. I did, as part of that, find out that I was hugely deficient in vitamin D. So getting that up, like every little thing helped a little. Like vitamin D helped a lot, but I was still tired. Um, and that's one of the things I just keep talking about it. Like I also have a therapist, so I'm dealing with any kind of anxiety, depression, etc. So I'm doing all the things, and I'm still tired. And um, the thing about it is, when you're that tired, when your fatigue is out of control, just as if your RA inflammation is out of control, sometimes you have to make some life changes. And one of mine was cutting out things I did, which was not fun because it kind of isolates you even more. But it's important to talk to your doctor about that fatigue, because they need to take a look at is your meds working like they should. They might want to suggest tweaking your um, your treatment to get better control over inflammation. And sometimes all the little things you do chips away at it. Like it is rare to find one thing that deals with all the fatigue and just says, presto, you're done, and back to normal. In my case, it was things like leaving a situation that was incredibly stressful. It was treating my vitamin D and B12. It was going more outside, leaving the house. 3 years of being stuck inside and isolated and not seeing your friends. Whew, that's hard. Um, and it was being patient with myself. It was, I like to say that if I'm in a really bad spot with my health, it took a long time to get there. So it will take a long time to get past it. And I feel after about 12 months, I feel like I am starting to feel more like myself. Fingers crossed it continues. Um, so, what are some of the ways you manage your fatigue? I'm going to go into sharing some of my tips. I have a full list of 10. Excuse me. In the fatigue post on my website. But let me share half of them, and then you can go look at the rest if you're interested. Um, Other than talking to your doctor, we've always already covered that. So get a referral to an occupational therapist. These are people who are experts in helping you do things more easily and more efficiently and conserve energy. And it can be, whether it's a tool, a different way of doing something. An OT can be absolutely essential in learning to kind of chip away at that fatigue. And again, you can use a talk over a discussion guide for that meeting. That's the great thing about this guide. Sorry, I just have to plug it again. It's not just for your rheumatologist, it's for an OT, it's for your GP. It's like for any doctor. You just plug in specific symptoms specific to that doctor. I recently saw a gastroenterologist, and I used this particular form to get clarity on my symptoms, and it was really helpful. Secondly, try meditation. Meditation is interesting. It is a surprisingly effective way to both rest and rejuvenate at the same time. If I meditate for 20 minutes, like even 10 minutes, I feel better. I feel rested. I feel I have more energy. I feel more focused because all of me took a rest. And when you do this every day, it accumulates. Right? You just feel better and better. Also, deal better with my pain and depression. So does that. Create an energy analysis. And this is something I'm going to be talking about more in the next few months. It's basically like treating your energy as you do your finances and make a budget. And one of the first things, like if you were making a budget, one of the first things they say you should do is basically track your income and expenses for a week, a month, maybe, right? And so you know where your money goes and how much and when it goes and whether it and where the pitfalls are and when you spend money you don't want to spend, etc. Right? But you track it without any kind of judgment for a month. And then you take a look at that data and make the changes you need to. And you do the same with energy. Like even it'd be great if you could do it for a month, but nobody can. Like I'd get bored and wander off, quite honestly. So try it for a week. Like set a timer for, let's say, once an hour, once every 2 hours. An hour is probably best. And then write down when you've done that hour. And you can also, you can do a spreadsheet that has different categories, or you can just make a quick note. And if you feel like it, you can also write down like how exhausting that action was. And you might find when I did this myself, I found just as I'm writing this down, I started making changes. I started becoming aware of saying, okay, I booked 3 really time and energy intensive things to do in one day. This is bonkers. So I move things. So you might find like just the simple act of being aware of how you spend your time helps you move things that are tiring. So and then this is one of those things that can then, like, once you have that data, you can start looking at it and say, okay, for instance, we do one energy time intensive thing a day, whether it's calling your insurance company, which you know will take a while, and arguments, or writing an article in my case, or cleaning up the guest room, etc. Right? Number 4, do less than you can. I was for years trapped in the I don't feel well, so I'm not doing anything. So now my house is chaos. And then I felt good one day, and then I would spend all of my energy on cleaning the whole of my living room, say, and then not feel well and flare and have to rest for several days, during which time my living room became a mess again, and repeat. Are you like that? Do you know this one? And at a time when I had zero energy, I'd had a very bad flare for a year, and it took everything from me, and I couldn't do that. And I just started doing less than I could. I would clean up 3 pieces of paper a day, or maybe 2. And then once that was done, move on, do it, and like take care of myself. And I realized when you do less than you can, it means you have enough energy and physical ability to do less than you can tomorrow and the next day. And it just means that you are consistently over time getting more done than the burn and rest method. So highly recommend. And it's going to take just a suggestion. Make sure you give yourself permission to leave the place a mess, because initially The place will still be messy, even though you spent 5 minutes doing this, right? All depends on how. It might be 5 minutes or half an hour, but make sure you stop while you still have energy for the rest of your day. And within a week, you'll see a difference. And it's kind of fascinating and also very satisfying. And the last one I want to share here is ask for help. And I've talked about this a lot, how our culture basically teaches us that asking for help is a sign of weakness. And I have several lives, I think, talking about this. It's not true. It's just not true because we all depend on each other. And I have realized that asking for help is an act of love. The people who care about you want desperately to help you. They want nothing more than to take your RA away, but they can't. Like they want to make you feel better. And asking for help with an errand, a drive to the doctor, decorating your living room for the holidays, like ripping apart that storage room that you haven't dealt with for a while and now you don't know what's in it. Speaking from personal experience, asking for help with that is going to make them feel that they're doing something, and it's going to do, they're helping you, you're getting the help they need, and you get to spend time together. So it's a win-win-win. So that's one of my suggestions. But despite all of the different things you can do to help manage your fatigue, realizing that fatigue is part and parcel of living with RA is kind of like, well, it's the way it is, right? But you can find a way to work with it rather than be debilitated by it, at least in general. And like so many other things with RA, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it will take time to get better. So be patient with yourself, forgive yourself, allow yourself the space to not be well. Because being tired isn't just being tired when you have RA. It is a deep, exhaustion, that, and you and I know as well, both know, that if the average person out there was this tired, they would call in sick and go back to bed. And somehow we find the strength to keep going. And I think it's important to acknowledge that you are basically carting around this huge load, but you're still going. So acknowledge your own strength and forgive yourself for needing more space to rest, to heal, to talk to your doctors. And that's important. Make sure you bring up fatigue with your doctors and just say, I don't understand. We need to do all the tests. I need your help. What else can we do? And it's about slowly over time building a toolbox of tips, because just as you have a toolbox for dealing with pain and flares, you need a toolbox for dealing with your fatigue. There may be overlap between the tips you use for your pain and your fatigue, but you also need other things, because like 7 different things together will get you further in terms of dealing with your fatigue than just one thing. And really the goal is always keep the goal in mind, that managing your fatigue to a point where you can live your life, because that's always the goal. So let me know if you have any questions, if you want to share your story, etc. And like I said, talk over a discussion guide. One of the things I also like about it, just at the end, is you can print it out and handwrite things, but it is a fillable PDF, so you can just type things, which is often easier for RA hands. So that's it for me. Let me know what else you want me to talk about now that I'm back to going live, which maybe I will be, as long as I keep not being exhausted. What do you want me to talk about? The holidays are coming up. Do you want me to talk about that? Do you want to talk about other coping tips, pacing yourself, etc.? Just leave them in the comments. This was a blast. Thank you very much, Pam, who watched live. And I'll talk to you next time. Have a good day.